Hey, what's up out there? It's Dave Duford here at Final Expense Agent Mentor, where I help agents like you succeed in selling life insurance. So in today's video, I'm specifically talking about the oft frustrating experience with dealing with OneLeggers. So in today's video, I'm going to more or less kind of describe what to do if you run into a OneLegger and how to effectively and gracefully handle it so you don't offend your lead and you give yourself the best chance that you're actually going to make the sale in the first place. So, what is a one-legger for you new guys? Well, a one-legger is what us insurance agents refer to when we have a situation in which we have a husband-wife couple that we set an appointment with, or we door knock to get in the door, and then we begin the presentation process, we realize that the other spouse is not there. So we're effectively giving a presentation to one person or one part of a two-party decision process. So this is considered to be a bad situation to be in. Why? Because most people, most spouses, most couples make a decision on purchasing something in a mutually considerate situation. It is very rare that you find that a husband or a wife buy something that is high priced, no matter if it's insurance or another product, until the other person is consulted. And this is even when you have a situation where the person claims that I make all the decisions in the house. Everything comes down to me. I'm the decision maker. I make the money, and I make the decisions on what to buy. These are things where even when you hear this relenting claim, you still want to overcome and deal with. Okay, so let's go ahead and go through a couple of these points here related to running one-legger. So, is it ever bad to run a one-legger? Well, yes, it's always bad. And let me explain why. Well, I want to say always. It's like 95% bad. The bottom line is everybody who is married knows if you make a decision to buy something, it is usually, to some extent, a mutual process. I'll give you my personal example. I bought a van maybe about 4 or 5 years ago when the twins were born. And I can tell you, I was the one that was running the van back and forth. I was the one that was trying to, decide to check it out, see what it was like, try it out. And I was the one that was taking the initiative. But I promise you, the actual decision to purchase that van was not my decision. It was my wife's. Why? Because, well, after all, the van was for her. It was for her to cart the kids around. It was for her and her pleasure and her enjoyment, as much as you could get that kind of stuff out of a van. So even though I was the one writing the check, I was the one leading the negotiation to buy the van, it was really down to my wife's decision. And the salesperson only saw me, but it was a two-step process where two people are involved. So, I think that in most circumstances, you're going to have, if you have a spouse or you have a couple, there's going to be two people making a decision to buy, whether you like it or not. And when you go into a position and you go into a sale where somebody's going to have to pay on something of considerable value, that's going to have to be continual commitments for a long period of time, you need the input of both. And there's other factors of this too as well. So it is said that when you present and you deliver information to somebody, that they'll only retain 20% of the information. Think about when you go in and to replace a life insurance policy. They very rarely remember. They may remember the amount of coverage, they may remember what company it's with, but they may not remember all the features and benefits and riders and all the extra add-ons that were purchased at the time of sale. They just remember the bulk of the main of the offer, which is that 20%. That's how everybody is when they go tell people about what it is that they just did. So if you present to one spouse and you give them all this great information, they're totally thrilled. Now they take it to their other spouse, or their spouse, and they only are going to remember a portion of the information you gave them. They're not going to be able to convey the other factors of the sale either. The biggest reason people buy insurance, I think, is because of the sell that's made from you, the agent, in the sense that you sell yourself. You can't do that effectively, obviously, if this spouse is telling the husband or the wife about you or about the product. Like, that whole angle is missed. It just kind of happens naturally, but only in a face-to-face environment where both are present. So there is a loss of information. You're missing out on the most critical aspect of the sale, which is selling yourself. And you're basically transmuting this down to its lowest common denominator. How much is it and what does it cost? And when you do that, you change this valuable product to a very crummy commodity that can either be answered with a yes or no. And you never want to do that, because that is reducing the value proposition. That's reducing the unique selling aspect of what it is that you're doing. And it's lowering it to a transaction. And it's hard to make a sale where you're asking somebody for a lot of money for a long time when there's just that lack of value because of how the process is communicated up the chain. So this is why you should pretty much never run a one-legger. You are going to be in a circumstance at an extreme selling disadvantage. And it doesn't really matter what you're selling. You're just asking for trouble from a retention standpoint, a persistency standpoint, and really a conversion standpoint. So what do you do instead? What's the best chance, or what's your best chances of actually getting a sale and making something happen? So you want to effectively, gracefully bow out of a presentation if you find that there is somebody that should be there that isn't. You should also, as you set the appointment, confirm whether or not this particular information is for your spouse or for just yourself. That implication tells you if there's going to be both there or just them, or if there is a spouse there. So how do you actually gracefully bow out? So take, for example, this call I made a couple years ago. I walked into an appointment. We started chatting, and I noticed, I said, "Hey, I see that you got your spouse here. I take it was listed on the card. Is he around?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, he went up to the store, or he had to go on a job. He won't be back until a couple hours." I said, "That's totally fine. So why did you send the card in?" This is referencing final expense. And she said, "Well, we sent the card in because we're interested in burial insurance and that kind of stuff." I said, "Great. Well, let me do this. I'm really busy, and most people that I sit with are looking for some kind of coverage on themselves as well as a spouse. And I'm married too. And whenever we look at something that is this important, I always like to sit down with my wife to actually just mutually put our heads together to see if this is something that makes sense. So what I'd like to do is see if I could reschedule with you tomorrow or for another time when he'll be available with you. And then we can both look at this thing together as a group, and then you can decide if it's something that makes sense." Does that make sense? And then I just went to rebook the appointment. So it was not an offensive approach to rescheduling. Like my thumbnail, there's a lady that says, "So why do you want to speak to my husband too?" or whatever it says. Basically, the implication is that because she's a female, she can't make her own decision. It's not that at all. It's really that once you're married, this makes more sense if you're married. If you're single, you kind of can see it from the outside looking in, but trust me. I mean, I make most of the decisions in the house, and I would tell a salesperson that. But however, if a salesperson came back and said, "Hey, look, I know you make most of the decisions, but certainly she's going to have some kind of thought process on this," and I can tell you, me being married too, you want to have both of you here so you can discuss this together. How's Tuesday at 2 tomorrow sound, so we can look at this as a group? That is not offensive. It's true. It's a true statement. And, at the end of the day, you will close more of your deals that way. Again, if you go into this process where you're essentially, if you look at this from the business to business market, what you're pitching here is an influencer. And if you talk to anybody that sells to businesses where you've got a purchaser, you've got a check writer, you've got influencers, and you've got end users. There's different components to the sales process when you sell to businesses. You can sell an end user and they can be totally sold on this particular product you're selling, but it makes no difference if you don't actually talk to the check writer or if you don't talk to, a main influencer in the process. You got to sell all these people, and the best thing to do is to get the check writer and the influencers together, because they will play off of each other and think in a way together that will come up with a better determination and decision. So when in a business to residential or business to consumer market, what you're selling here is the influencers and the check writers are basically, in most circumstances, the husband and the wife, these spouses together. And so you've got to sit them down at the same time to maximally get the best results. Otherwise, you're pitching an end user, and the end user is going to approach the check writer, and he's going to be like, yeah, sounds like a good idea, but whatever, you know, or it's going to go to the influencer, and he's going to be like, okay, whatever. You need to see both at the same time in order to maximize your results and spend the selling time with both present. Otherwise, you're going to waste a ton of time, not get as much results, and not make as many sales that you could have made had you had met with both. Again, a lot of the times these people come up with conclusions about the product presented to them. They don't know any of the differentiating points of the value, how your product's different from something else, let's say, and you end up just not getting good results. Now, last point here, is there exceptions to the rules? Of course. I can think on a handful of occasions where I just sat down with the spouse or the significant other and I made the sale and it was great, and you know, you think, oh wow, it does work. I can do a sale of OneLegger. But what I realize is, you know, a lot of the times we see something as an exception and we make it a rule, and it's just not. There are countless times where I've tried to pitch a OneLegger and never worked out, enough to the point where I can tell you guys don't do it, because your odds are pretty high that it's not going to happen. I can tell you this too, if you don't have that, and this is an instinct that was built over thousands of presentations, you probably won't have it for a long time. But you'll still sell to people that could have bought on their own, even if you reschedule to see both of them later. It's not like they'll say no to you. If they're interested independently and make their own buying decisions and they're unique from the vast majority, even if you follow this rule for them, you're still going to save your time more often than had you if you didn't do it and you rescheduled instead. So I hope you like this video. If you're interested in selling insurance and you like the idea of selling final expense insurance, I recruit agents into my final expense agent mentorship program. I train agents personally. I get them contracted with different carriers and put them into a sales and marketing system to help them achieve success in selling final expense. If this is something that interests you, go to my website. It's feagentmentor.com. Click the contact box, send me a message, and I'll be happy to give you more information on how the program works. If you like this video, please thumbs up, as well as subscribe if you haven't. I do daily videos like this pretty much every day, Monday through Friday. And if you got a question or comment about dealing with OneLeggers, please feel free to leave it below. In fact, if you like what you've seen here and you've got some sort of OneLegger experience you'd like to share, feel free to. I'd like to hear how you guys handle it. My name is David Duford at Final Expense Agent Mentor at feagentmentor.com. We'll see you next time.